Exodus by CJ Hawthorne is a sci-fi fantasy for people who like books like Brandon Sanderson's Skyward and movies like Guardians of the Galaxy. That's how the book was advertised, and after reading it, I agree. CJ Hawthorne is a Christian indie author on Instagram at CJ Writes Sci-Fi, and Exodus is part of an upcoming series, so as the next books are released, I'll review them too. Welcome to Freytag's Lab, where I review indie and traditionally published books for gripping stories, sensational characters, and clean romance, as well as post some of my own writing adventures. If it's clean, I'll probably read it. So here's the idea. This book stars Cloelia Sterling, an 18-year-old girl who's grown up on the ship New Exodus, and now lives on a habitable Earth-like planet called Prometa. Cloelia, having lived around the same group of people forever, and being the adventurous type, wants to know who or what else is out there, so she attempts to contact alien life out there in space and accidentally gets her people enslaved. She decides to go find help since there's obviously other life in space, and has her best friend blast her into space on a rickety ship. Spoiler alert. From there, she ping-pongs around the galaxy, befriending the captain of a cargo ship and one of their crewmates, members of an alien race who were displaced by the story's antagonists as well, and the royal family of one of the only alien races willing to help her fight back. Cloelia doesn't succumb to being a copy-paste member of the reluctant hero trope, nor is she the completely impulsive and self-destructive adventure-seeking type. Impulsivity is definitely one of her major character flaws, but it exists in a realistic measure. Although the story told from first-person perspective may run the risk of info-dumping and severe emotional drowning, the world through Cloelia's eyes develops at a pretty even pace while also keeping in touch with her thoughts and emotions. Her feelings don't hold up the story's pace, and the story doesn't swallow up Cloelia. First person also runs the risk of the characters becoming a self-insert for the reader. However, Cloelia has a realistic personality that is not simply a waterfall of stereotypes, character tropes, and one trait that becomes her whole personality. She's extroverted, but not throwing herself off a cliff every chance she gets. She's nostalgic and likes vintage things, but's not overshadowed by it being an obsession. And she has moments of selfishness and then sudden self-awareness that are extremely relatable. Her responses to the world are her own, and not just a mirrored version of how other characters react. Cloelia is successfully a round character, and a pleasant and good fit for her story. Another thing I want to note about Cloelia is the relationship among her and her family members. Conversation, nicknames, family inside jokes, and memories all sneakily come together to create a very organic family dynamic. Instead of falling into tropes like dramatic disrespect towards parents, or aggressive sibling rivalries, or worse, corny bro and sis dynamics, there's natural conflict that comes from differing personalities and experiences just existing in one room. Rather than just the common default of every family member having unreasonable distaste for another for no reason, the Sterling family might have one of my favorite biological family dynamics in modern media. To no discredit of the found family dynamic in the story, of course, but this really stood out to me because biological families in modern media just always seem to hate each other for some reason. Spoiler alert, the side characters. We haven't given them enough love yet. They represent a variety of alien races as Hawthorne sets the stage for a broad galaxy full of characters facing shared suffering at the hands of a common enemy. As we meet the side characters, crucial details of their stories are woven into their interactions with Cloelia from the very beginning. Featuring my favorite characters and starting in order of appearance, Xander, Cloelia's best friend, and the one who creates the vessel that takes Cloelia into space. The guy in the chair and the aspiring inventor. He's a supportive friend, and he and Cloelia, until her adventure into space, share a symbiotic relationship. He has someone to test his inventions, and she gets the opportunity to travel through space. Xander's a relatively flat character. However, because he has independent aspirations and does not blindly rely on Cloelia to make choices in his life, he remains a strong character in his own right, despite his limited page time. Lorana is the parallel to Cloelia's mom and a con artist who's subtly encouraged to go straight by Cloelia's presence. She's not the typical hard-hearted female warrior who denies all femininity in order to appear tough. She's street-smart maternal, but also has an overall elegant personality coupled with being an experienced pilot and willing role model for Cloelia. Preya is more of the stereotypical tropey tough girl type, but still doesn't surrender to a label completely. The slightly older and wiser counterpart to another of the side characters, she has a lean towards compassion and rolls with the punches without arrogance. She appears subtly driven by a desire to live up to her purpose, whatever that may be, and seems to have a strong moral compass. The biggest character of redemption, in quotes, I think, was in the romantic interest Koro. He initially seemed like a throwaway romantic interest who was just going to be inexplicably supportive of the spunky female main and quietly dragged into danger with her, for no reason. Not a reason to put down the book in my opinion, but a little disappointing. But that was my mistake. While Cloelia is an instigator who ends up dragging him out of complacently going along to get along, near the middle of the book, he experiences separate personal suffering that encourages him and gives him more motivation than just a crush on a girl who's practically a stranger, as well as revealing pre-existing motivations. Hawthorne does a brilliant job of keeping these two characters from being swallowed up in impulsive chemistry and, quote, romance, and giving them time to just be friends and, fight a war. Koro gets to be his own character and entity, and doesn't suffer from obsession with the main, which is so satisfying. As a whole, the characters are individuals, and speaking as a budding writer, it is not easy to form and maintain multiple unique voices and personalities, but CJ Hawthorne has pulled it off. Even characters who are similar, introvert, extrovert, pairings, have unique personalities and behaviors that differentiate them. An example that comes to mind is an interaction between Cloelia's best friend Xander and her love interest Koro. Both young men are clearly more introverted, but there are two different flavors of introvert. During their conversation, it was extremely satisfying reading and seeing how, despite both being more quiet and introspective, they retained their individuality and had clear differences. But I digress. When any characters interacted in the story, they each had their own voices and dialogue that bent to their personalities while flowing naturally in conversation. Hawthorne's diverse personalities made this story a pleasure to read. There are so many more, including the others on New Exodus, the rest of Preya's group, and more later in the story, but there's only so much time, and I won't spoil the whole book. You'll have to read it for yourself. I've mentioned how organic all the characters' personalities and dialogues are, as well as Cloelia's family dynamic. On the plot side, what's satisfying about Cloelia's round character design is how naturally and realistically her mistake happened. When she invited aliens to her planet, starting the conflict of the story, there was no fanfare, no corny grandeur, and no self-righteous entitlement to a greater purpose. She was just a young woman who, in a stroke of excitement and tunnel-visioned haste when presented with the opportunity she had been waiting for, made a decision that would backfire. The drama and consequences of her actions didn't pile onto her immediately. Her choice didn't yet matter. There's nothing more human than making a decision and not realizing the consequences of your actions until it's too late. Speaking of too late, the villains, the Alorans. An evil race in the context of the story and from the perspective of the main character. The arrival of these villains was also impressively done. While their arrival as a whole was grand and cause for awe, they did not arrive with villainous fanfare. They were just brilliant strangers in a shroud of deceptive beauty. It's not like, here's the villain, fear them, like, say, Loki's entry in the Avengers movie. More like, here are these strange beings. You know something doesn't feel right, and they definitely have the potential to be a threat, but you're stuck waiting in a peaceful moment for it to all go south, and you don't know exactly how or when it will happen. The suspense of waiting for everything to go wrong is perfectly extended, and when everything does go wrong, it's perfectly timed. The clear social classes are incredible and introduced very subtly, but by the time you're through the book, they stand out in your mind. The Alorans being top of the heap, cargo runners like Lorana being a necessary but underappreciated working class, the Kuso being a warrior society now stripped from fame and grace, they all are very clearly brought to life with small but memorable moments throughout different points of the plot. Well-placed and simple mentions of cultural traditions and racial history of the different aliens in the book adds another level of depth. The author input a lot of detail without info dumping in any one place. Although the culmination of Preya's story was initially a surprise, the lead-up was in fact obvious in hindsight and is a credit to the author's skill at presenting important character details in a subtle, seemingly unimportant way. Cloelia's curiosity is also a key factor in the understated reveal of information and the success of the final bombshell, again a testament to Hawthorne's plotting skills. This is only the tip of the iceberg on the various points of Exodus's plot, but with respect to the author, I won't say anything more. There were absolutely more points I loved, but there's simply too many to include. In Hawthorne's book, there is an outstanding theme of faith. I love the way Hawthorne wove faith into the story. The Varay are the god figure of the story, working in their own time and helping in crucial moments when the time is right. Cloelia's dealing with the Varay makes her feel very real, as she is in a situation many believers find themselves in with God. Now can you help me? Nope. Now? Not yet. Now? Well, it can't get any worse, at least. It got worse. Now? The Varay come in clutch when Cloelia needs help most, and when they do, it's game over for the enemy. It's also really nice that it's not just an overt retelling of a Bible story, like, oh, here's Paul, but we renamed him Jax, and here's Paul's story, but we added modern slang. Exodus is its own story, but contains relatable moments of faith and life. I won't assume Hawthorne's intentions by any means, or whether or not this theme was meant to be overt as I described it. In the context of the story, it is in fact very subtle and natural, and doesn't beat you over the head. As far as pacing goes, Exodus moves along very well, not getting too hung up on any particular plot point or cutting a moment too short. Near the end, it seemed like it might be a little drawn out. However, moments of conversation that initially seemed unnecessary and a bit slow revealed themselves to be crucial to both the story and Cloelia's emotional development. The story quickly regained strength for a dramatic climax. As far as unanswered questions go, I only have two. How will the significance of one of the characters' deaths culminate? And considering that the Alaran race is so formidable, what will be the consequences of this final win by the heroes? I would not call the conclusion unearned by any means, but it certainly sets the stage for a sequel, which is absolutely not a flaw or a negative criticism because the book is in fact part of a series. With that in mind, I see these questions setting the stage for the rest of the series. With the analysis section coming to a close, I'll say this. Hawthorne has set the stage for a broad galaxy, the introduction of many more alien races, and a killer comeback from the Alarans as they resist surrendering to the ragtag weaklings they desire to control. The Exodus universe has a strong foundation and a great future. Taking a bit of a common sense media approach to this, we have positive role models. There are a number of strong female role models like Cloelia and Preya. Cloelia takes responsibility for her mistakes and is more than willing to put herself on the front lines to fix it even though she's overwhelmed. Preya has a new destiny thrust upon her, but accepts it with grace for the good of others and wholeheartedly acts in their best interest. There are also strong male role models like Xander and Koro. Xander has goals of his own but also keeps in mind the well-being of his society, friends, and family, especially later in the book. Koro is a gentleman who has deep love for his family as well as respect for women, co-workers, friends, and strangers. Not naive, but kind. For positive messages, there's a strong message of forgiveness. Even in the midst of a life-threatening war situation, moments of understanding and forgiveness as the characters navigate mistakes, betrayal, and guilt are heartwarming. There's also the message of redemption. Anyone who's willing to make up for their actions, intentional or unintentional, is given the chance. Unless you're sensitive to made-up curse words, not unlike Brandon Sanderson's use of sparks, you won't even bat an eye. I can't remember them exactly, and I'll never be able to find one quickly, but safe to say, perfectly harmless, and they don't jar the story at all the way real curses would. To my recollection, there are no serious mentions of drinking or drugs. Thank goodness, because books with heavy drug mentions set my teeth on edge. For spice, there's none. I do a little celebration whenever I find a book with no spice. Even better than that, the characters don't have an obsession with the opposite sex. The only thing I find worse than open-door scenes is when the characters are vividly lusting over each other and pretty much walking the line right up to undressing. All this to say, personal happy dance moment. In fact, the little crush scenario that develops by the end of the book is so cute and wholesome. For my final recommendation, Exodus by CJ Hawthorne is a clean novel featuring a charming found family, realistic and sympathetic characters, a strong plot, great dialogue, and a slow burn romance that doesn't drown out the plot or the personalities of the individuals. I give it 5 stars, no complaints. If this sounds like something you would like to read, I've linked CJ Hawthorne's website and her book on Amazon. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy reading Exodus.